Hello everyone and welcome to part number 3 of our overview video over the Oudinot patch and all its new features, as we have already covered the 2 new divisions in detail in 2 previous videos, which you can watch if you want to get to know more about Berlin Command and Unternehmen Zentrum. And now we cover all the other new gameplay implementations, UI changes and maps that have come with the patch. And we're gonna start with the trade system, then we're gonna go over veterancy changes, the changes to artillery, the changes to already existing divisions with new units added to them, 2 completely new units and a couple reshovels, and then we're gonna go over 2 the tutorials, the maps, the UI changes in-game, the new CV system, and then 1 new change that hasn't been shown yet, neither in the dev log nor in the patch log, but that is pretty cool. And then we go over the current issues and the pros and cons of this patch in the end, and hopefully what is to come soon. So let's go in with the trade system, and let's start with a favorite unit of mine, which now is a solid bit weaker, but that is good so, because the KDA Schützen before were quite nasty, and they have a lot of firepower here. But now, thanks to the trade system, they're represented better, as the first trait that we have a look is Reservist. Reservist gives more suppression to units that have it. These units are represented as units that are not frontline soldiers, that are not units that are trained to be in the thick of fire, but rather reserve line units that are only there to fill the gap if necessary. And they take more suppression. KDA Schützen, the most prominent example of them. And yeah, this means that KDA Schützen now will not be able to keep up the fire as long as they were able to do it before, especially combined with their lower veterancy, which has major suppression impacts now as well. This means that this unit here gets stunned down really, really quickly and then is rather inefficient. So you want to keep them out of major battles, or you want to bring in a lot of KDA Schützen so that the number still does the job. But these units will now be not as efficient as they have been before. Their loadout's still great, they still tank a lot of damage for you, but their combat effectiveness will tank really, really quickly. And you can see a lot of these tools will work around the new suppression system. This is the first implementation of this. The next trait, though, is one of my favorites. It doesn't have to do with suppression, but it has to do with another gripe that I had with the game before, that optics sometimes were a bit lackluster still, and we have 2 traits. This is the first one that buffs optics a bit without being too overbearing and just buffing optics across the board, and this is security. Security forces are here to protect the rear, patrol the rear, and keep your rear lines safe from enemy incursions there. And the first trait here is security, which for infantry units like the Volkspolizei that are having this trait, if they stand still, if they're not moving, they get an buff from medium to good optics. So they are still not as good at optics as recon infantry, which has very good optics, but they are better than normal infantry, and they can maybe see an enemy recon car that tries to sneak by and tries to wreak havoc on your rear line, sneaking by, and attack them better than other units could before. It's also not an aggressive trait, so it's not like, oh yeah, I just run forward with these units and I will spot anything in front of me in the bushes. Nope, it's a defensive tool. It only happens when they stay static, so it's not cheesable in that regard either, and which is really good. I like that the way they implemented it. I didn't thought of this idea myself, so props to Eugen of implementing security this way. Should help out keeping the rear line safe, should help out with recon issues a bit, whilst not being an insane across the board buff to recon and optics of infantry. So yeah, good job here. And then we go over to a trait that could help out units like KDA Schützen, and for that we have to go to the British or another NATO nation, as currently they are the only ones with military police for now. There will be GDR and Soviet Union military police units eventually. They are not implemented yet, but they will come. Matt said that on Reddit. And the military police units here give a better suppression regeneration and remove the retreat or the broken and the stunt traits from other units around them. Like units that are routed, falling back, or that are stunned. Those traits will be removed if a military police unit is nearby. And the suppression regeneration is increased, so they get less suppressed quickly, or quicker than if no military police unit would be nearby. So it's a nice buff unit, which gives military units more of a role in combat. Like before, military unit, police units were only used as a tripwire unit on your flanks because they obviously don't have quite the combat power. But now there is a reason to keep them within your other infantry because they give a buff around in a circle and help out your other units around to fight better and get better, quicker back into the action. So military police units now have a role, and implementing them, especially with units with reservist traits, is rather worthwhile. The next trait that we have is IV infantry, which you can, for example, find on the American Fireteam AT and Fireteam Law. And IV infantry is one of the coolest traits and most unique traits, especially a nice level up over the Steel Division system of traits as well, in complexity. And that's this. IV infantry is getting a suppression bonus if they're fighting next to their IVs. So you're really incentivized to use your Fireteam Laws, your Panzer Grenadiers, your Motostrelkis next to their BMPs, Bradleys, and Martyrs, and really keep them as a combined arms, because if you move your fireteams away, they're still okay from the stats-wise, but they're obviously a rather small unit, so they are not that strong in that regard. But as long as you keep them close to your IV, they keep their firepower, and obviously they also protect the IV from enemy infantry trying to get too close and so on. So really fighting as a combined arms unit now with your IV and the infantry in them is a lot stronger, and it's a really nice way of you nudging players to play in tank division in the way tank and armored infantry, mechanized infantry is supposed to play. So Fireteam Laws and so on will now profit from that buff. And then we have a couple of traits that we can show you in one unit. The unit with the most traits currently in the game, and that is the Recon Spezialaufklärer of the GDR. As this unit is one of quite a couple special forces units. Obviously, Spetsnaz and Green Berets and so on have this trait as well. The Fallschirmjäger B1 and the East German Fallschirmjägers. Special Forces is most likely the strongest out of the traits, as it's also the most straightforward. It gives you less suppression by a good margin. It gives you more damage output by high rate of fire, better accuracy, and it also is supposed to make the units faster. That is not implemented yet, from my knowledge, but it should be changed soon so that these units are also moving faster. So a hell of a lot of buffs, and this makes these units a lot stronger in just firepower. Then Spezialaufklärers also have the shock trait, which if in really close quarter combat, it says here in woods and urban terrain, but even in woods on the max range that you can see each other in the forest, it's not applied yet. You have to get closer than that for it to apply. Shock is mostly on units with CQC focus, like engineers or and pioneers with flamethrowers and so on. They deal more shock damage if they are really close to the enemy now, and get a modifier there that they deal even more stress and suppression there. And obviously combined, this makes this unit a lot stronger. And then the last thing that this Spezialaufklärer gets, which makes them basically unbreakable in this combination, is Resolute. Resolute is standing for a unit that is politically indoctrinated, well-drilled. GDR has it on a lot of the units, like basically most of the GDR units by now are either Resolute or they are reservists, like KDA. And this gives you less suppression in combat. So this is another buff to suppression system for a unit. And you can see here Spezialaufklärers before, loadout wise and damage output wise, in the 1v1 versus a KDA Schützen, they actually would have had a hard fight. Like, even with veterancy bonies applied, the fight was not clear-cut. Now, it's absolutely in favor of the Spezialaufklärer. And with the Special Forces, the Shock, and the Resolute, they are fighting throughout the fight really, really well and stronger. Whilst the KDA Schützen are okay at the beginning, but drop super quickly now due to the Reservist trade. And then are basically useless at the end of the fight and just get mowed down by Spezialaufklärer. So, the differences in infantry is now way beyond just equipment. The trade system really implemented that well. And then we have one last trait that we have to talk about, which I really enjoy myself as well. For that, we have to switch to the USA. And as their LRS is one of 3 units currently having this trait, the SAS Patrol and the Fernspeer of the British and the West Germans are the other 2 units that have it so far. More units will get this trait. Every nation should have a unit with this trait in the end as well. And that is the, not every division necessarily, but every nation. And that is the ground surveillance radar. And this is showing that this unit carries a radar system that they can set up when stationary. And that gives them 1 extra level of optics. So, different reasoning, but same effect basically as the security forces. But instead of going from normal to good, they go from very good to exceptional optics. So they are then on the creme de la creme of optics. And as all of these units also come with exceptional stealth, that means they are the perfect scouting unit if stationary. And they see as much as possible whilst being as stealthy as possible. So setting these guys up at the right location now gives you really, really strong intel. It's not, but I like that it is not just they have exceptional optics and exceptional stealth, but they instead have to be stationary for a while, so it's not, you can't just abuse that by running them forward and just seeing everything. No, you have to be clever in how to set it up. It's stronger on the defense than on the offense, and it is a lot more intricate on how you have to play around it, but if you set it up, it's really good and really strong and gives you a bit better recon on the enemy and more options of getting that intel on the enemy than before. So really big fan of the GSR system. And yeah, those are the general traits here. Another system that is also indicated by traits is, if we go over here, Amphibious. Amphibious is in the game now as well. You have a lot of vehicles now, especially on the packed side, like the BT-76s, the BRM-1s, the BMP-1s, BMP-2s, BMP-3s, and so on. And then, like the Transportpanzer Fuchs and the AMX-10 RCs and so on, that can now go through water and come out on the other side and wreak some havoc. So, Amphibious making river maps a lot more interesting, as you can do some nice flanking maneuvers there now as well. And then we have a look on the changes to Veterancy. And for that, let's go into KDA. And let's have a look, for example, on the Concourse. So, this is the normal stealth, normal Veterancy. This is it on next Veterancy level, and this is it on the highest level. As you can see, it doesn't look as impressive as before. The numbers, only 2% accuracy, no rate of fire change. And then, if you go to the highest level, it's only 5% more 5% more accuracy here, so 10% bonus overall, and only 1 extra rate of fire. And that is because rate of fire and accuracy bonuses have been heavily reduced. Sadly, the tooltip doesn't show you that yet, so yeah, this hasn't changed yet. The reason for it is that the last figure here, stress resilience, has been buffed a lot. So, as you can see, accuracy only changes by 10% instead of 25%. Rate of fire also around 10% instead of 33%. And 5% on the first level of Veterancy. But the stress resilience is increased by a hell of a lot. And that is the big difference. There's still a reason to take Veterancy levels. It just works different. Instead of, oh yeah, this unit now outright kills everything, because it has its insane rate of fire and insane accuracy and it always hits. It's, oh yeah, this unit now doesn't lose its efficiency over combat. Whilst other units get stressed out and they drop down in efficiency, this unit will stay fighting, and if they get a hit and a near miss on the enemy will get stressed out whilst they don't get stressed out. So the experience level is still really important, but it also means that the overall time to kill has been heavily reduced because there's no insane level of accuracy anymore from a super high veterancy unit that just murders everything. Like, this still only has around a slightly more than a 50-50 chance of hit on highest veterancy. It will keep it though, even if it's under fire, but it's not a 67 or so percent chance of hit, and on other units, especially on some man pads, for example, you could go up to 80 or so percent before. That's not possible anymore, which leads to a lot lower, a lot longer time to kill and a lot lower efficiency in all units when it comes to killing power, especially in AA as well. But AA gets compensated potentially by more suppression. Yeah, so airplay is supposed to work around suppression now a lot as well. With if an OSA gets a hit or a near miss, it deals a lot of suppression and forces the enemy plane to go back to base. Sadly, in the air part, currently that's not implemented on all units. As you can see, OSA already has the new value. Estrella 2M still only has 15 suppression. Obviously, it shouldn't go up to 400 suppression, but 15 suppression is basically nothing in the system when it takes around between 500 and 1000 points usually to get a unit to go back to base and stress them out completely. 15 obviously is absolutely nothing, so here the system is not applied yet, which means that a lot of AA currently is not as functional as it is supposed to be in the new system. Hopefully that gets changed soon. So yeah, these are the veterancy changes. Let's move on to the new units. And the first one of that is in the Soviet arsenal and in the 35th Air Assault Division. And that is the 1V119 Real Stud. Another exceptional optics vehicle for 60 points. Amphibious, 2 small MGs here in the front. And this thing is nice to get more vision on the enemy. With amphibious, it also can reposition nicely around the enemy. So really cool vehicle here. Can be pretty helpful. Then another change to a division roster has been made. 239th Motorstrelki. They now have access to the Mi-24K as well. So they now have access to a nice recon helicopter with guns as well. Mi-24K pretty capable. So nice addition to that roster. And then we have a new logistics vehicle for the Americans, as they, for the 3rd US now, have the M2A2 Bradley CP. As this is a change of making 3rd US more working around their mechanized forces and less around their big infantry squadrons. And as you can see, this gives the new IFV infantry support to IFV infantry in close by and allows them to work as combined arms. It has the tow, and availability of all CVs has been reduced as the new CV system is in, which we'll have a look in a second. These come 2 per card. Relatively expensive, but also relatively deadly if you use them correctly. Could be useful with the new system. And then the last change has been made to Fireteam 84 now being available in 3rd US. So you have your 84s in 3rd US, you can bring them in Bradleys, so they profit heavily from the IV system. The change that has been made on the other hand is that you only have 1 card of mech rifles now in 3rd US, so you really have to rely on your fire teams in different versions, the Fireteam Law, the Fireteam 84 and the Fireteam Dragon, because you can't use your mech rifles as just a meat shield anymore. 3rd US is a lot different now to 8 Infantry, which is more around the mech rifle and mechanized and motorized warfare, with M113s as your carrier for your fire teams, whilst the 3rd US is a lot more around Bradley and your small fire teams doing the job for you now. So those are the changes here in the armory. Let's move on to the next part, and that is a really cool addition, and that should help out all your friends that are not familiar with WARNO yet, and maybe not familiar with Oudinot games at all. If you want to bring them in now, you can do so, as the tutorial system is in, and it's functioning really, really nicely. It's not all tutorials yet. There are hints in especially in the first one, where it says that there should be a tutorial about rules of engagements. That's the only one that is not in the, that's only a couple of things that are missing though, because most of the things get explained here. Like you can see it's supply, how to use planes, how to use seat, which got buffed nicely. Seed missiles now deal a lot more AoE, so even if they miss next to the target, they still have an impact with suppression, with damage. So seed missiles a lot more efficient now. Seed is really capable of doing its damage. It still doesn't quite have the range it should have in my eyes, or it's still the turning on and off gameplay there is still maybe a bit too strong against it, but Seed a lot better still. And then you can see Recon, where you get explained the line of sight tool and so on as well. Main battle tanks, ATGMs, mortars, all of these tutorials rather solid. Not the most amazing tutorials ever made for a video game, but for sure the best ever made in the Eugen Cosmos. So big shout out there for Eugen to make this and make it easier and more accessible. A video game that absolutely should have more new players. So yeah, good job done there. And then another nice improvement here, which we also can combine with the new maps, is the new map picker here. You still can choose maps here with the battlefield if you want to do it quickly. You exactly know what you want to play. But if you click on the picture, you now have the scenario list where you can filter for a lot more things. For example, you can filter for only destruction maps, where we have a lot more now. As you can see, you can also filter in by players. Before we only had Two Lakes, Ripple, Vertigo, and Loop. Now we also have Geisa, Crown, Chemicals, Rift, Iron Waters, Volcano, Triple Strike, and so on, all with their destruction version. Destruction versions all having a different layout as well, so there's a good reason to play destruction maps next to the conquest maps. They are really laid out for the game mode itself, with bigger zones, and also different spawn zones. Rocks here, the new map, having a destruction version as well. We're gonna have a look onto Rocks in more detail in a second. And you can also, if you want to have even more detail, click on here, and then you can see it full screen basically, the map, where you can also see all the zone layouts. And yeah, Rocks is the new map coming with this patch. The new city maps still all to come. There's quite a couple more new maps to come. And then we have a new version of a map that we had before, and that is Loop as a 2v2 or 1v1 map. As you can see, Loop usually 10v10, and usually you fight over the river. But here the spawn zones are along the river, and you fight along the river with basically 3 corridors. It's a really nice and cool concept of this map, and like even one level better in my eyes than the current chemical version, which we already have in ranked. So I hope we will see this map in ranked soon. It's not in the pool at the moment. And as you can see, you have 3 rear zones with 2 points, then 1 center zone with 2 points, and then 2 flank zones here with 1 point. With the new CV system, that's not an issue. The amount of capture zones is still important, but not as important as before, so they can be a bit more flexible with the numbers here. And it's really a nice map to fight over, with you having to choose which lane you prioritize and how much you invest there. And a lot of nice combat around this area. Really, really good map. I highly enjoy it, and I hope we will see more recuts of other maps. But I'm even more happy about 2 other changes. The first one is to 2 ways, where... Oh no, 2 ways. There we go. A map that is not represented correctly here, because if we have a look into it, we can see what it is exactly about that has changed here. As 2 ways now has a bigger center zone, which should help out with it not being as much of an artillery fest here. And then you see these little roads here. These are new additions, and the roads over here are nice and welcome, but more important are the roads here, and then especially the road here and the road here. Because before, this side over here always had issues of ordering units in here. The AI and the pathfinding was pretty horrible, as it used this road here, 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 and here, because the road through this was too long, and the road here also was too convoluted to get units efficiently here. Now they come in over here still, but they use this road, or at least this road, to get over here, instead of going all the way around and getting this way over here and getting shot up on the front. So 2 nice changes here, the center zones and the nice addition of a couple of roads that should make the map a lot more enjoyable to play. It's still slightly favored to our side because the left town is a bit easier to capture than the right town. But center zone should be a lot more fun to play around, especially for the blue side here. And that is a nice addition to two ways. And then the other map that has changed, and that has changed to a big extent, is Black Forest. A big shout out to Eugen there, and especially the map department team. They, Certicolot has worked heavily on getting this map out into the light of day and getting a fix on it. And yeah, Black Forest now a lot better, as it has been completely recut. And it, before, you remember, we only had zones over here, and then one zone here, one zone here. Now we have 6 zones on it, 2 rear zones. We also spawned corner to corner now, 2 center zones, Center and Boris, which you fight over. And Boris is now in the forest. The forest now has a reason to fight over. And it's not just hidden warfare. You still can hide a lot here. You still can ambush enemy rear roads all over here. But Boris has a zone that you can access with roads where you can move armored vehicles through if you want to get them here. That's not their perfect territory, but it still can be done. And then you see this lovely sawmill with new textures here as well, for showing that it is a wood logging camp. And then also new buildings in this town, which you also can find on 2 ways. The towns here have less of these big block buildings. There are still a couple there to show that, like a farming household, but most households here are smaller buildings now with 1 family inside basically. And the town looks way more natural. Lighting has been changed here as well, and it's one of my favorite maps. It went from one of my least favorite maps to one of my favorite maps, especially with the new CV changes. So this is the new Black Forest, and then we have one new map completely, entirely, with the new map of rocks, and there we will also show you all the changes to suppression that have been made, and all the changes. Another neat UI change that has been made on the battlefield as well. So yeah, let's go in with KDA and let's have a look on all of that. So here we are on rocks, the new map for this, for the game, a 3v3 map, which has 3 spawn zones. It's relatively big, around the river as well, but also once more a vertical river, not a horizontal one, so it's fine. You have some nice mountain ridges over here, which on the Conquest map are not too important. On the Destruction map there is spawn zones actually here around these roads, on the side. And it has some lovely zones in the middle here on open ground, a massive zone over here. So Anna, really heavily contested, hard to conquer. Same with Dimitri. And then a couple of zones there are more favored to one side or the other. And then 2 deep zones as well. So a really cool map, interesting lighting as well here, with a bit of fogginess all around. And you also can see the new system for CV here now, as we gonna start here. And the new UI change, which I absolutely adore. Before we had a similar system as this one up here, but in green and with just numbers. Now you have a nice bar where you can see how many neutral points there are, how many points the enemy controls, and how many points your side does control. So that is the change there. And then we can also now show you the lovely suppression system changes here, as we can shoot now next to KDA Schützen, for example. And at the same time we can shoot next to a Spetsnaz and maybe see how those impact the units differently, whilst our UATs here will just drive fast through these zones and conquer them all, and we'll capture them all. So let's fast forward and let's see what the artillery does here to our units. So as you can see, there is some UI changes here as well to these units, and the first salvo has landed, and the Spetsnaz here, if we zoom in, they have taken 2 damage, which also now is indicated in the new hit point indicator below the unit. They have taken 1, each of these boxes is 2 hit points, and one of the boxes here is empty. So they have taken 2 damage. KDA Schützen have taken 3 damage. So some of their boxes are empty out as well. These UIs are not perfect yet. As you can see, the little corner in the bottom is blocking it halfway. And then the other thing is suppression. And the cohesion here still high. The cohesion here already mediocre. The bar, which is above the hit point bar, on red units relatively hard to see, but good that it is around. Hopefully will improve soon as well. In its position or color coding is already relatively full, whilst the Spetsnaz here nearly have not taken any suppression whatsoever. And now it's fully full here. Here still high cohesion. Here the unit now stunned and low. Here the unit is stunned as well, but still on normal cohesion. And so that's the heavy difference in how cohesion works. If we fire onto the Modschützen that don't have special forces, you would see that they will take it a bit more. But yeah, that's the change there. Our UVATs here now will take this zone, and then we'll drive on. So those are the changes here. Next unit will be under fire in a second. As our unit here does reload. First hit does good damage, as they are resolute and they have high veterancy. They also take stress really slowly. So yeah, this is the major difference here to Spetsnaz, to KDA Schützen. Maybe even taking a slightly less than the Spetsnaz, which don't have the resolute buff. And so this is a big difference. So yeah, now you can see here we have 3 zones, enemy has 0. There are still 9 points to be that are neutral on the battlefield. And then one last change that hasn't been shown anywhere, and that has been asked for by the community for a while now, is if we move this MTLB here next to this Mi-26 and then we stop it, then it will refill its supply. And now you can now reload your supply trucks next to other supply trucks. Also, the system of how supply bars work has been changed. Each of these bars now indicates 1000 supply, and then the dots next to it supply in how many more thousands of supply this has. So this Mi-26, for example, has still all 6000 supply. Meanwhile, this here has half a bar, so 500 supply on the MTLB that is in there. It's a system that you have to get used to, but that might in the long run make it easier to compare supply trucks, different supply trucks next to each other. But within the supply truck itself, it maybe is a bit weird now that a supply truck, for example, with only 500 supply starts with only half a bar full. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a better system. And in general, a lot of the systems implemented, especially with the UI, still will need a lot of work. The A system I already talked about. I like that it is less deadly. I like that airplay is now not as heavily focused on I just murder outright everything that flies in. As books still do this because their base accuracy is good, but the veterancy effect is not as insane on AA. But the suppression system is flawed still. Some helicopters have too much suppression resilience, and some suppression stats on some AA units are completely not there yet. So that is still a flaw there. A couple of other things, like, for example, KDA Schützen and all other reservists maybe taking even a bit too much suppression now, and this being a bit too much of a nerf, whilst some other buffs like Resolute still being a bit too strong. All of these changes are still not perfect, but I think gameplay-wise, it's a nice step into a good direction by Eugen here with these changes, and I hope you enjoy them as well. Yeah, the UI changes like hit point bars, I'm happy that they are here. I would not want to miss them. They are for sure an improvement, knowing how many hit points your units have on a clans. But I think they could be done better, and I hope Eugen improves that. Though a lot of nice improvements in this patch in general, and Oudinot made WARNO a big step into the right direction, and I'm really looking forward to this game at launch. I'm really looking forward to the operations and the campaign operations, especially now that we have the tutorials. If they use the same kind of storytelling and so on there, the operations should be really dope. And yeah, I hope you look forward to this as well. It was a pretty long video here, so we're gonna end it here. And if you watched through it all, consider leaving a like and a comment down below, so this YouTube video gets a bit more traction, WARNO gets a bit more traction in general, and I hope to see you in the next time. Bye bye, and have a great day. Thanks for watching.